Could you imagine being in person and having conversations the way people have Twitter conversations? It would be so bizarre to sit in front of another human being and be like, well, my idea is called Idea X. Idea X, and yet Y is available, and you have not said a thing about B. He's like, yeah, I'm not talking about Y. You would bring up Y. After all, idea Y is deeply troubling, and it makes you a pedophile. Oh, pedophile, eh? That's why, of course, you would bring up idea Y, but not idea B. I can tell why, because you've been an idea B advocate your entire life. Ugh, idea B, says the idea S supplier. Yeah, sure. I'm going to listen to a person who speaks about idea S when idea B was clearly the most valid idea. I hate you and you're literally Hitler. You hate me and I'm literally Hitler. So says Hitler. Hitler. Oh, Hitler much? Hitler? Well, you, Hitler. Yeah, okay, Hitler. Like, there. That's every Twitter conversation in a summary. Like, there you go. That's all of it from start to finish. All right. Well, it's that time of year again, everybody. It seems like it's time to celebrate. It might be a little more difficult depending on where you are because of the coronavirus. I know last year's Pride festivals were effectively canceled, but they may be coming back this year. And every year when Pride comes back, it brings with it some wonderful things, of course. A celebration of all things in the queer community, the LGBTQIA+, diaspora, is on full display, and it's quite a magnificent and splendorous thing to see beautiful human beings chiseled and greased up for the occasion, dancing in defiance of what may be judgments from society. But it also brings up a debate that is often held between various factions of both the gay community and the larger community at whole as to whether or not Pride is allowed to have certain elements of depravity. So we're going to talk about that depravity and get through it. All right. So I think what really made this a part of the discourse. Oh, Leviathan Chad, thank you so much. What really made this a part of the discourse this year was Shoe on Head doing a couple tweets. Let's see if I can pull up the tweets in question. I know Lauren Southern made some tweets that Destiny ended up retweeting, and then that made more people angry and stuff like that. Weird hill to die on, but at least they're dead. Okay. Hey kids, it's really important for the queer community to remember that Pride is not a kinky event. It's about a celebration of love, not about sex. And if you show up in leathers, you're a danger to children. Kid literally is like, oh, guys acting like dogs. Adult can play pretend and dress up too. How fun is probably all she's thinking. And she's right. We need to normalize this. There's nothing sexual going on. In fact, it's kind of precious. All right, you're a fascist. Wasn't that hard to say. Children are exposed to violent imagery all day and all night, but God forbid they see someone in a thong. Lamau, you prude. Won't someone think of the children? Okay, there, boomer. Sex is not an adult topic. Kink is not an adult topic. There are some incredibly kinky children out there. Excluding kink from queer spaces tells these kids that who they are is just wrong. Just as much as excluding trans or gay people would. Protect the children. Protect kink. Shut the fuck up, hetero. Sex is family friendly. You lunks, how do you think families come to be? I don't want my kids to see fetish stuff. Why? What are you thinking that it should come from? What if you raise a kinky kid who can feel open about it? So I think those were the first ones that kind of set this off, at which point the Vosh clips, which I'll play in a second, disparaging people who show up to those events in dog costumes, which led to Big Joel, I think, and Jack Saint doing responses, which ultimately resulted in this interaction. I'm dying on the hill that children should not be anywhere near adult-themed shit, whether that be drag shows or kink, and if the Overton window has shifted so far that I'm a reactionary for this take, then so be it. Now, Joe went through a lot of hatred yesterday, being called pretty much a pedophile by a lot of different groups. The notion that exposing kids to concepts of adult sexuality is inherently predatory, harmful, or toxic is really odd on the face of it, in my opinion. Seems to obscure the actual structures of abuse and power that victimize kids. Regardless of your thoughts on this, if you imply that I'm a creep or some shit, I'm gonna have to block you, get a grip. Lamau, don't call me a creep tweet, plus Shoe on Head quote tweets was truly a recipe for some good vibes. Oh my god, it's the white replacement lady. They're all coming together for me. There is no excuse to not understand why we age gate things. Children cannot understand or consent to the colossal consequences, medical, psychological, social, or otherwise attached to sex. Therefore, we do not want to normalize or introduce them to these acts until they can. Some things should be gate kept based on age, so like maybe all of it should be. Get rid of any kind of kink or sexuality and pride, but also perhaps put them in a middle box and expose them on Family Feud, censor the scenes where someone says penis or Steve Harvey's. I was watching all this go by, Yeah, I know, age gape. Just Freudian slip. I was watching this all go by, this lightning fast, and seeing this is one of those situations where I think everyone was doing what they do on Twitter. On Twitter.com, technically, is scream and yell past each other. That's kind of what always happens. Neither side picking up on the other side. I mean, that's, I think, what my calling has been. That's what I think my purpose was on this earth, is to suddenly put myself into the perfectly nuanced take on any given topic, and then stop the left from cannibalizing itself in real time. That's been my purpose, I think. Anyways. Big Joel tweets, I'm so deeply stressed out. You think getting called a pedophile 300 times a day wouldn't have an adverse psychological impact, but then it happens to you and you're like, wow, that's a lot of people calling you a pedo groomer. And it's so funny because I'm not making a massive claim. I think parents must show children the world of kink. I'm not saying parents must show their children the world of kink. I'm just saying parent takes their kid to Pride. The kid sees a leather man. This isn't a crisis scenario. And if so, why are you even going to Pride? And then did this.
Hey, everybody. So I think the reason why I'm having trouble dropping this mentally is because I'm just so, like, mad about it. Like, our society literally is packed to the brim with sexuality. You go on television and you see ads with women who have condiments dripping on their breasts. You go online and see pornography and people drawing Sonic characters sexually. And you think kids don't see that? You think kids don't see that shit? Of course they do. But gay people, kinky gay people, have a day, a pride parade where they can go and have fun and do their weird sex shit, and that's just crossing the line. You don't have to police culture at all, except when it comes to a few gay people who are dressed in leather or put on a dog mask. That's crossing the line, and I'm a pedophile for saying that that's not a crisis situation. It's just being a bunch of crybabies. I think that's what's really getting me about it. Okay, I promise I am done speaking about this issue. Bye.
Oh, wow. This is, I think, indicative of just twitter.com, what the discourse is like on the twitter.com, to say the least. Now, hey, guess what, everyone? Going down this rabbit hole, okay, we're going to be doing some things. We're probably, and I'm probably, going to say something in contradiction with your favorite mummy or daddy. Guess what? You're going to be okay. You're all going to be totally fine. You're going to get through this, and you're going to be better for it. Trust me, there's nothing wrong with calling out someone if you disagree with their take. That's not the same as me suddenly saying that I hate Jack Saint, that I hate Chew on Head, that I hate Big Joel, or that I hate Vosh. I in no way hate any of these people. In fact, I think a lot of them do a lot of great things, and a lot of them do, a lot of them can have shitty takes as well. Guess what? It's part of being a fucking human, you know? I'm going to have takes that are bad. I'm going to have takes that I say out loud that afterwards people are like, whew, Lance, what the fuck is coming out of your mouth? What is wrong with you? Shame. Shame. But here's the thing, all right? At the end of the day, it's healthy to have discourse. Can I say that? So don't worry. I know a lot of people get so upset if I go after one of their daddies or mummies. And then all of a sudden, they're in here and it's like, I liked Lance at one point. I enjoyed his content. But then he said that he didn't like my favorite content creators' parable or phrase or things they had said that week. You're going to be fine, all right? Yes, my takes on takes is bad, but that's fine. That's a spicy take, you know? We can do that. And I'm probably going to disagree with some people's takes here. But anyways, I think Big Joel and myself and Jack Saint were the ones pushing back on this. Now, to an extent, all right? I'm going to say this, and I think this one, I censored it, so it's going to be totally family friendly. We'll be fine. I'm not going to get in too much trouble here. All right. So this was basically my stance on this, all right? And it's not just mine. This is very typical of Pride in general. Now, if you have not been to a Pride parade in your time, don't worry. You will have ample opportunity, all right? There's going to be many a Pride. Last year, because of COVID, they were digital Prides. But there's so many vast amounts of Prides coming up. Here's the thing. Pride in my city of Vancouver is a very, very glorious affair. Sometimes it's not just a day, it is a week. We have Pride Week, and in that week we have many, many events. There is the Pride Parade, which is massive and glorious and fantastically gay in all the best ways possible. But there's other things. There's other events that take place, and guess what? Some of them, because this is an ongoing debate even within the LGBTQIA plus community, some of the events are adult themed. Some of them are. Usually they take place at night. There are parades at night that take place at night, and they can be quite spicy. If you do not want to see the secular flesh, if you do not want to be exposed to beautiful tits and dongs, then perhaps you should not attend that event. And certainly, if you don't want to have very serious discussions with your children, especially at an early age, do not bring your kids. And that they say that. Don't bring your kids. They're usually 18 plus events. There is a daytime pride parade, which is a lot more sanitized, which is what I think some people are probably asking for here, in which, yes, you're not allowed to wear your mask that has a giant penis coming out of the mouth that is usually used to insert into other orifices. So that is not permitted in that setting. However, the idea that the leather daddy, as pictured on the left here, is in any way not allowed to attend pride events is on its surface very disrespectful. I'll explain why. We're going to get into a little bit of the history of this, but pride is a couple of things. One of those things is, of course, a celebration of the Stonewall Riots and the revolution that took place via the Stonewall Riots, that everyone, myself included, we are standing on the shoulders, or sitting on the shoulders rather, of gay giants. And I mean that both literally and metaphorically, because the leather daddies, when it came to the events of Stonewall, were some of the people on the front lines, on the ground, getting their fucking skulls smashed in by police officers, so that people like me years later would have the privilege of being able to talk about this kind of stuff with any kind of nuance and being like, yeah, well, gay is great, gay is good, that kind of stuff. That in large part came from people who were willing to do that, stand in the front lines and get the fucking shit beat out of them because they were willing to die for their beliefs. Like, you know, we're all soft as shit these days. We're all terminally online. We're discussing these things online, and we're not the ones who are in the streets where, you know, being gay was not only something that was a bit of a taboo. It could get you arrested. It could get you beat up. It could get you killed. Absolutely. So these days, the idea of what is acceptable and not acceptable at Pride is pretty well defined. Pride events typically have guidelines. This event is a daytime event. There will be family members there. There will be children there. You are not allowed to have an exposed dong in any way, shape, or form. That is not a part of it. As well, if you have like a giant male dildo coming out of the mouth of your mask or whatever it is, also not permitted. Because yes, this is kind of hard to establish as anything other than being sexual in its very nature. However, this one on the left, this is not necessarily sexual. I mean, it is enticing, and I may become sexually aroused from looking at it, but I'm just saying that this on its surface is not sexual. Let me put it to you like this. Is going to the beach sexual? Is going to a beach where people are wearing thongs? Men can be in thongs. I know it's not as becoming in North America, but in Europe, certainly men wear thongs all the time. They're dressed in nothing but thongs. You can see their exposed ass cheeks. Women in Europe will have their breasts exposed. You will see everything. But anyways, if you go to the beach and you see that kind of stuff, are those people doing that to be intentionally sexual? Are they doing that to intentionally arouse you? Are they just going to the beach and exposing their breasts, hoping that if you see them, you will then become erect beyond belief? You'll have no control. You know? Is that the reason? Or are they just existing? Are they just going to the beach because they want to enjoy the sun? They don't want tan lines. They want their perfectly curvaceous boobies to be nice and tanned, creased up in the sun, you know? All right, maybe I'm transferring this into something else. But anyways, they're not intentionally trying to arouse you. If you saw that and you became aroused, well, that is on you, and it could be perfectly natural to do so, but that is not their intent. They're not doing that to arouse you. They are doing that because they are just existing, and that's very similar with people who dress up like the leather daddies, or many of the other variations of that. Leather dykes is another form of that. There's a lot of different variations within the queer community, but they are not doing that intentionally and walking around intentionally to arouse you, to elicit you to become sexually aroused by that very moment. That is just a fashion statement by them and something that they want to feel accepted for, because they are not accepted for, or at least they weren't accepted for in society for behaving that way. It was seen as degenerate. It was seen as vile, right? There was a puritanism in saying, because like at the end of the day, if you're not into this to you would probably be something that is just obscene and confusing. But guess what? That's the same way as a lot of media is seen by people who happen to be homosexual. I will give you some cases in point. Here's some examples. This is mainstream media. Okay, this is imagery that is not only exposed to children, it's exposed to everybody. This is advertising. This is to get us to consume a product. This is intentionally sexualized. Intentionally. Like this right here is sexualized to the point of getting you to buy that burger based on your fucking erection. Like you might not have wanted the burger before, but now you're a little bit confused. It's like, well, I both want the burger and I'm fucking hard, but I'm hungry too. Why are you doing this to me? Why can't I have just one? How about this? This one is unbelievably sexist, by the way. Like it just reduces women to literal fucking sex dolls, you know? It'll blow your mind away. The BK Super 7-incher, $6.25 for the entire meal. Like, yeah, what? I mean, this one is on the verge of TOS. I mean, I'm very, very carefully dancing around TOS with this one, but this is a cologne ad. This is an ad for cologne. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm mostly straight. I'm 75% straight. You know, scientifically, mathematically, it's been proven. So that 75% of me loves this shit. And I can't resist. I need to buy that cologne. I don't know what it's for or what it smells like or what it does, but I need to buy it. So the advertisement is working on me. How about video games? Video games, they're intended for kids and teenagers, right? How are video games? How are video games advertised? Well, will you look at that? Soul Calibur 5. I'm interested in this a lot. I don't fully know what the game is about, but I'll be honest, it does not fucking matter to me. I just want this, you know? I want all of it. And that's not to say, by the way, sexuality isn't used strictly for heterosexuals. Sexuality as a marketing tool is used across the board, all right? There's tons of sexy posters of like beefcake dudes just like, you know, hanging out like this as like yogurt drips down off their like tongue and stuff like that. Like, don't get me wrong. Sexuality is used up in all ways, okay? In all ways to mass market and sell us items because, yeah, we're simple creatures, okay? Like, we love a good burger. We love it. We love a good tasty burger. And we love sexuality and nudity. That's what it is, you know? God damn. Now you're horny for fast food and video games? Well, that was the whole point of the segment. That's what I wanted to talk about. Now, let's learn a little bit about Stonewall for 2 seconds, just so we can understand what this whole event is actually about.
In the early morning hours of June 28, 1969, a riot broke out in front of the Stonewall Inn in New York City. The violent protest became known as the Stonewall Riots. The Stonewall Riots were a watershed moment in the gay rights movement, sparking activism and awareness across the United States. We'll look at the roots of the riots, the events, and their lasting impact. In the 1950s and 60s, homosexuality was still considered sodomy and illegal in 49 states. The punishments varied greatly by state, ranging from heavy fines to imprisonment. In New York City, gay bars were havens for people with diverse sexual orientations and gender identities, places where they could avoid harassment and violence. The Stonewall Inn served as a popular refuge. The Stonewall Inn was owned by the Mafia. The Mafia bribed the police to look the other way. In turn, the Mafia made money overcharging patrons for drinks. Even so, the patrons were not fully safe from homophobia and discrimination. The Mafia would extort wealthy patrons, threatening to out them to their employers and families. Despite the Mafia's bribes, the police still regularly raided the Stonewall Inn and other gay bars, charging them with solicitation of homosexual relations. Trans and other gender non-conforming people were also targeted, subjected to violence, and arrested if they weren't wearing what the police deemed gender-appropriate clothing. This oppression and mistreatment came to a head in the early morning hours of June 28, 1969. 9 police officers entered the Stonewall Inn in a raid. The patrons were fed up. As the police roughly tried to arrest bartenders and customers, many resisted. Outside the bar, people in the hundreds began rioting. They threw bottles at the police and pushed through the barricades. The police officers retreated from the crowd and locked themselves inside the Stonewall Inn. Rioters responded by setting the bar on fire. Police reinforcement arrived, and the original officers managed to get out of the burning bar. Meanwhile, the angry mob had grown into thousands. Eventually, the police were able to get the crowd to disperse, but it didn't last long. The riots continued until July 1st. While some criticized the violent and destructive riots, others pointed to the brutality and unjust treatment of the gay community. This large-scale defiance made a massive impact on society. The Stonewall Riots were the beginning of the modern gay liberation movement, which also brought attention to others marginalized for their sexual or gender orientation. The riots sparked the formation of the Gay Liberation Front, the first group to publicly advocate for equal gay rights. On the one-year anniversary of the riots, they also organized the first Gay Pride Parade. Today, Pride events are still held on the anniversary of the Stonewall Riots in cities around the country and even the world. In 2016, President Obama made the Stonewall Inn and the area outside where the riots broke out a national monument. This became the first national monument celebrating gay history.
Pretty cool.
The Stonewall Riots may have been violent, but they marked a pivotal moment in history. No longer would people quietly endure the stigma associated with their sexual and gender orientations. Through the Stonewall Riots, the gay rights movement gained mainstream visibility and a momentum that continues to this day.
Now, we've come a long way. Don't get me wrong. We've come a very long way. Sorry, I'm just going to turn this down. I think my voice is probably super loud now. That was just a really quiet video. Hey, how does... Oh, is that still too loud? It looks like it's maxing out. Hey, how do I sound now? Maybe I'll turn this up a bit. Is my voice okay? Let's try this a little bit more. Yeah? Maybe? Decent? Anyways, we've come an incredibly long way. Now it's a little low? What? No, I'm going back. All fine. All right, let's go back and forth. Okay, so we've come an incredibly long way, everybody. But still, even in this day and age, as you can tell from this discourse that we're having, there's still a vilification of certain parts of the LGBTQ community. Certain parts of the LGBTQ community are still seen as degenerate or deviant. I take particular offense to the idea that drag and drag queens, for example, have no place around children. There are drag shows, okay, that I have been to that absolutely not only have no place around children, have no place around civilized society. It was the most degenerate thing I've ever seen in my entire life. I'm talking about the Box in New York. If you ever are in New York and you're plus 19, no, 21 you'd have to be, go to the Box. You will see things there, the likes of which I had never seen. They're so incredibly, degenerate. And I say that in a loving way because they themselves call themselves degenerate. It is a show of the most obscene variety. And I do mean that. And that is the purpose. You go there, you take the ticket, you buy the ticket, you get in there, and then you just have your world shattered. And you're like, well, yeah, I can't unsee the things that I have seen. But again, that was with intent. There is drag shows that have been done in the streets, especially in the streets of Vancouver, that are way more PG and family friendly than anything you'll find in Disneyland. Like, I'm sorry, but if you want to lump all drag people together as a monolith and drag culture and you know, drag queens and the performative aspect of that as being intentionally sexualized or sexual just by its very nature, that would be a big miss in my opinion. There is incredibly like they are just very entertaining. And they're performers, you know, incredible, you know, drag shows. Oh yeah, well, we should talk about drag shows as well. J-rag shows. Awesome article by them. Why kink, BDSM, and leather should be included at Pride. Earlier this month, just weeks before the 50th anniversary of the Stonewall Riots, a Twitter user shared a since-deleted viral tweet directed at Pride goers. It contained a number of statements about the nature of Pride, which one particular remark sparked a string of intra-community discourse. Please don't bring your kinks and fetishes to Pride. There are minors at Pride, and this can sexualize the event. Debate quickly followed within the queer community, calling into question the place of public displays of kink and BDSM at queer events. Some argued with the original tweet, asserting that wearing fetish gear or publicly expressing one's sexuality would violate the consent of those present, as it would make people feel uncomfortable or triggered. Others challenged these sentiments. Kinks, sex, and protecting them are inherent parts of Pride, wrote Nicole Mason on Twitter. One of the core tenets of Pride is deliberation and working against cultural shaming, wrote a user. Calling to make Pride kid-friendly implies that celebrating sexuality and kink openly is bad. Normalizing these things is a goal of Pride. Whether you stand on the issue, the fact remains that BDSM, subversive sexuality, and leather culture have enjoyed a long history within the LGBTQ plus rights community. Such public displays of sexuality are driven by much more than libido or cultural impulses. They're an inherent expression of queer culture and sexuality, and as such deserve a place of pride as much as anything. For activists and members of the leather community, the notion that kink should be excluded from pride is a symptom of a larger issue. Writer, anarchist, and self-identified transsexual leather June Amelia Rose tells them she believes that tweet reflects the modern but regressive pride discourse and promoting the idea that sex is inherently damaging to see, experience, or think about in a public context. And yeah, apologies for their language used here. I believe this article is maybe a couple years old. However, this has been leveled at queers and perverts who have a history of being medically pathologized and criminalized. Simply being kinky or sexual in public is not a violation of consent. I didn't consent to see rainbow cops. This one's important. We're going to get to it very soon. Now, don't get me wrong, everybody. This is not my thing. I'm not into kink or BDSM. Like, I don't really like equating pain and pleasure, but some people are. I'm also not into the whole dog scene. I don't understand it, to be totally frank. Doggy doms, all that kind of, like, I don't understand why. Personally, like, I don't like walking around on my knees. I find it painful. Like, even if it's like someone's like, well, it's just to suck a dick. I would be like, well, can I just lay down on a bed and get comfortable or something? I don't know. Just it seems like a lot of work, and it seems, you know, I feel as if like it would just tire me out and hurt, to be totally honest. Like, you wear knee pads if you're walking around as a dog all day, and also like, just objectively, dog food is not as great as human food. You know, I haven't had it since I was a little kid, but I remember trying dog food once maybe and just biting into one of those like little pebbles and being like, that's gross. I don't want to eat that. I assume canned dog food is even worse. So just frankly, I don't understand it. I don't understand that. But just because I don't understand it, which happens to be the case with a lot of things that are kinky or sexual, doesn't mean that I, by its nature, consider that just default to be degenerate or to be perverse or to be bad for society as a whole. Like, I think there's a puritanism to that. I think there's definitely an argument to be made about protecting children from sexual acts or sexuality. But people dressed up in leather by its very nature, just being a leather daddy, for example, is not intentionally 100% to be completely and only sexual. Like, that is a thing that people, I think, need to wrap their heads around, is that just by dressing in a leather, like if I wore a leather jacket with no shirt on underneath, sure, some people might perceive that as sexual, but it could also just be about me wanting to express myself. And just because I personally, again, don't understand this, you know, it's not something that I get. It's kind of scary to me. That doesn't mean that by its very definition, I should see it as something that is, you know, disgusting or depraved, for example. The meaning of the American celebration, now known as Pride, has changed since its advent in 1969. Before the Stonewall Riots, the LGBTQ plus rights movement was more about joining and appeasing the straight world. It was also about proudly resisting them. What came to a head in the 60s and 70s was the split between the homophile movement, which sought to assimilate the LGBT plus community within the cis heteronormative culture, and a radical resistance on the part of many drag queens, trans people, sex workers, and gay men. There has always been that idea, right? In order to be truly accepted in society, we need to be able to be mainstream. We need to water this down. We need to make this kind of like, let's just say gay light, diet gay, right? We need more men in suits and ties and acting as straight as can be. We need to, like, there's even been arguments where gay men need to remove the lisp and the idea of them being pejoratively called too feminine and things like that aspect. Those have all been like arguments made towards like the LGBTQ community. Yes, the palatable gay is basically it, right? Disney approved gay.tm, especially because this whole event has become so commercialized, so incredibly commercialized. For some people, gay rights and gay liberation do not hinge on particulars of sexual desire. For years, I've heard that we aren't just our erotic identities. Queer activist and author Amber Calibur wrote in a 1997 book, My Dangerous Desires. But for many of us, it does begin there. It does revolve around the ways we organize our erotic choices. Before LGBTQ plus people had pride parades, our community spaces were not just bars, but cruising spots and bathhouses, dungeons, and public restrooms. There should be no surprise that many queer folk find their sex lives and sense of the community to be intertwined. Queerness can be about lust, love, or both, but by the same token, kink, leather, BDSM aren't exclusively about sex. To a large extent, they're about community building. While mainstream depictions of BDSM might lead one to imagine it's nothing but a way for straight couples to reignite sexual passions, to be spanked and handcuffed, queer kink lifestyles in leather communities often go beyond sexual intimacy. They are built around traditions of service, informed, risk-aware consent, and chosen family. The advent of the AIDS crisis, leather men and leather dykes were some of the first people to take up the responsibility of caring for alien LGBTQ plus people. This is incredibly important, and why it is deeply offensive to say that leather daddies have no place within modern pride parades. Leather daddies, holy fuck, if they ever paid their dues. Even if it's not something that you agree with, or you find the way they dress to be intentionally too sexual or degenerate to you, they have been working, like I said, the front lines of Stonewall, getting their faces smashed in, or to be at the front lines of the AIDS crisis. I think people, because I was too young to understand the severity of this. This is something I've had to learn afterwards. The AIDS crisis was so severe in the 80s that people were scared to hang out with anyone who was gay or even touch someone who was gay because they thought this mysterious disease would get transferred to them. That it was so pervasive in the gay community, and the entire reason why is it had to do with the sexual act that gay people were involved with more, especially gay men. Gay men are often involved in anal sex. Anal sex has a higher chance of scarring or shredding skin tissue, so there will be more blood involved. And I know I'm just grossing a couple of people out who aren't aware of this, but this has a higher chance of increasing the transfer of AIDS. AIDS has nothing to do whatsoever with your sexuality. But that was something that was being pushed on people, and something that was believed within mainstream culture, that if you had AIDS, it was because you were gay, or that it was a disease directly affecting the gay community, because they didn't really understand what it was. AIDS used to be called GRID, G-R-I-D. It stands for gay-related immune disease. Because again, at the time, it was affecting the gay community so largely that it was something that was seen that was uniquely happening to gay people. They were vilified for it. Not only were they vilified, they weren't helped when thousands of them were dying on their deathbeds, withering away because we had no idea of what this mysterious disease was or how it was affecting them. They were also vilified simultaneously for being degenerate, for being perverse, for being pedophiles. All of these things were happening at the same time. Thousands and thousands of gay comrades, gay brothers and sisters, non-binary people dying, just waves of it. It was devastating to the gay community at that time. There's a big difference between people who want to spice things up and people who've been literally a part of a culture that has been here for decades. The mother of pride herself, Brenda Howard, a proud member of the LGBTQ plus kink scene, and notably wore a button reading by Polly Switch, I'm not greedy, I know what I want, in the 70s and 80s, lesbian S&M groups and the lesbian sex mafia and Samois, whose founders include leather scholars and writers like Gail Rubin and Patrick Khalifa, were amongst the earliest proponents of inclusive sex-positive feminism. These groups gave queer women a sense of community and sexual empowerment that they've been denied from the world at large. To exclude queer leather culture from pride, therefore, would be ignoring the contributions of communities that were integral to uplifting some of the most marginalized subsets of the LGBTQ plus community. These oppose the risk representation of queer fetish culture to treat it as a taboo and inherent sexual risk to youth. Both oversimplifies BDSM and underestimates the intellectual capacity of young LGBTQ plus people. My understanding is that BDSM is actually very far from sexual because everything that I saw as a kid wasn't sexualized for me. A 19-year-old second-generation queer who has attended San Francisco Pride and grew up with kinky poly-queer parents. Sunny's mother openly practiced both lifestyle and professional BDSM for most of their childhood, while Hitchling considers himself to have multiple parents and said that their parents are their mom and chosen stepdad too. So anyways, if you want to read this, it's a story on them. I thought it was a really, really good way of putting this all out there. But the biggest problem, I think, with this discourse so far, and it is every single year, is people lumping in monoliths like all kink bad, all BDSM bad, all kink hypersexual, all BDSM hypersexual, leather daddies inappropriate. We need to have one form and basically a chance for children to experience acceptance in the broader community if they happen to be LGBTQ plus, and this is one of their ways to do it was in these confines.
Hating prude types say that we shouldn't be teaching about non-heterosexual identity in school.
Oh, thanks to this,
we say sexuality isn't the same thing as being sexual. And then you guys cross your fingers behind your backs, run off and say, but actually, I'm going to wear a fucking dog gimp suit at this public event and be in full visibility of children while my throbbing erection strains the fabric of my tiny thong. Okay, stop. And this isn't even to.
Oh, is that the whole thing? Okay, so I'm gonna break this down very, very quickly for everybody. And I know if you are a fan of Vosh, there's no problem with that, and there's no problem in criticizing someone's take that you disagree with. I have to put this out there. I for one am still fans and a friend of Vosh, and yet I can say whether or not I agree with the take of his. Here's why I think this take is wrong. Because I think that we are conflating the idea of people dressing up in costumes with inherent sexuality. And that's what I think is wrong with it. I don't think anyone on the left, not a single person, will ever make an argument as to why it's okay for people to have throbbing erections in public, let alone at a pride parade. I do not think anyone has been making that argument. I think that is something that maybe like Lauren Southern and the right have been twisting this whole thing to be about, and that like, why are you exposing my kids to this kind of depravity? Because I don't want them obviously to be exposed to men with erections. I don't either. I don't think anyone does. I would like to keep any single person who is in a state of arousal as far away from kids as is humanly possible. Like I'm definitely on the side of protect the fucking kids. I think the people who attack children more often than not, and pedophiles and their ilk, the Epsteins, the Clintons, the Trumps of the world, they happen to be part of systemic. Usually it's what, a relative that someone knows, it's someone in their family, or it's part of someone who's involving themselves within human trafficking and shit like that. Like, it's not usually the gays. It's something that has been, and this is not what Vosh is saying, by the way, in any way, shape, or form. I'm not equating him with this argument, but this is another argument being said separately. There has been a long-standing vilification of gay people and equating them with pedophiles, saying that the two are interchangeable. And this did not bear itself out in the evidence. Like, unfortunately, it's usually heteros. It's usually the heteros who are involving themselves in pedophilic acts. But that was a long-standing accusation that was levied against the gay community for years and years and generations. And it's obviously been deeply, deeply damaging to the gay community. When this all boils down to it, and I stand by this statement, there is this debate that has been going on between what pride should be. Should pride be a celebration of the Stonewall Riots and how far queer culture has come, and also being openly displaying it proudly as if it's nothing to be ashamed about? That's one aspect. Should pride also be about acceptance and allowing children for the first time to see open displays of LGBTQIA+ unity and affection, and not be vilified for it? I think both can be valid, which is why most people and most prides around the world do separate events. Like I said, in Vancouver, there's a separate pride, there's a nighttime pride, and then there's everything that goes on in the clubs afterwards, which, yes, that is no place for a child, let me tell you. But the actual pride parade itself, the main one, is typically with a set of guidelines. You cannot have exposed genitalia, for example. You cannot have a costume that would be inherently sexual by its very nature, such as, again, having like a giant black dildo coming out of your mouth. There's only really one way to see and perceive what that costume is for. It's intentionally sexual. So things like that are not permitted within those. And those guidelines are pretty simple. To lump everything together, though, which is what we're kind of doing here, whether we say that, like, I want kids to stay away from drag, I want kids to stay away from leather, all that kind of stuff, is wrong. It is wrong because we are, again, equating all of that as one single monolith. We're saying that every single time this happens, and this has been something that, again, they have been fighting against their entire lives. And I'm speaking about every member of the LGBTQ+ community when it comes to this. So I'm going to stick by my guidelines. I've created a handy chart for everyone in terms of public pride events, and we'll keep it simple. Totally fine, totally great. Probably save it for the club scene afterwards, and at which point, there you go. But it should be simple. So I think one of the big miscommunications going on is when people say kink at pride. I think people walking around with leashes and public acts, sexual nature and stuff, not leather daddies. Like, that has confused me at first. And all this, when Lucy talked about it earlier, I was like, really? We're just fighting people over wearing clothes? Well, no, it's because we're lumping them all in. Well, is a collar, like, okay, so now we're going to get into the nitty gritty. Everyone's going to, like, you're going to ask me for step-by-step like, is this one sexual? Is this one not sexual? Can this one be perceived as sexual? There are guidelines and very clear guidelines laid out by every single Pride major event, because they are huge events. There are big ones in San Francisco. There's massive ones in Toronto, massive ones in Vancouver, massive ones in like all New York, you know. Pride is a beautiful, splendid thing that takes place in a lot of places, but they have distinct guidelines for this purpose, because this is not the first time this debate has been brought up. This is not the first time anyone's spoken about this. But again, I want people to make a very big distinction between what they perceive. Like, there are people who think that this isn't acceptable, that this is a danger to children. Like what you see here, this is going to this is a sexual predator. Kids should not be around a man dressed in this way. Like, I'll take it a step further. What if he wasn't wearing jeans and was wearing a black thong on top of this costume? Right? Is it still acceptable? Are children in danger if this man is walking around the street looking that way? You know? And my argument would be no. There's nothing inherently sexual unless someone is intentionally making themselves out to be sexual. Again, have you been to the beach? Ever? Have you been to a European beach where people are wearing nothing but thongs? Thousands of people wearing nothing but thongs, including women with their breasts exposed. But are those women doing that to arouse kids? Are kids in danger of going to that beach and seeing a bunch of women with their tits out? Of seeing a bunch of guys in thongs? And what if the guy had a monster cock and it's just pushing up against the side of the material of the thong? Is that now a danger to children to even be in that area, to be anywhere around it? Because the people in those situations are not being intentionally sexual. Like, just exposing your body doesn't necessarily mean that I want everyone who looks at me to suddenly become instantly aroused. You can become aroused by looking at them, right? You can become aroused by looking at this picture. Absolutely you could. You could become aroused if you walked by this guy in the street and saw him. But that doesn't mean that by his very nature, he is intentionally trying to arouse you, let alone arouse children. That's kind of a key part. Lance, that's not how it is in 90% of European countries. Well, my experience growing up in Catalonia, going to the beaches of Catalonia, was that there was thousands and thousands of titties on display. Thousands of them. Men in thongs, all right? European men do not wear shorts, they wear thongs. So thousands and thousands of naked people. Now, I'm not saying if you're a young lad exposed to that for the first time, you will not become aroused or something like that. But that's not those people's intention. They're not intentionally trying to arouse anybody, right? They're just existing. They're just existing. It's the same kind of Puritanism, by the way. I love how this blurred out dong has been on my camera. The same kind of Puritanism, by the way, is the same kind of stuff that has been levied against all kinds of different communities throughout history when it comes to this kind of stuff. And it's not by its very nature supposed to be sexual. Like, I can show you again. That's why I was pulling up ads. Like, this was a good one that you just sent me. I don't know who in chat did it. This, by its very nature, is supposed to be sexual. It's supposed to entice you and sell you a product based on the sexuality of it. And this is an old one. This is from like the 80s, isn't it? Leather Goddess of Phobos, #2, thanks to Infocom. Over the years, Infocom adventures have taken you to all kinds of places, to battle all kinds of characters, but there's never been an adventure quite like the full-color fantasy to save Earth you'll find in Leather Goddess of Phobos, #2. Big voices, big music, big trouble, action, adventure, and weird pulsating things. You can play as Zelda, the beefy gas station attendant, or as Lydia, the earthy angel from Atom City. The real beauty is how much fun you're going to have. Yes, it's a dangerous job, but heck, someone's got to do it. And with these kinds of graphics and sounds, you'll be battling these beauties for days, even years. Well, sign me up. Sign me up. Back in the day, literal Nintendo ads looked like this. They all did. Like this heteronormative sexuality is a long-standing thing, everybody. And we don't ever question it. Yeah, like fuck, No Rain just sent this. This is for Sega Saturn. In case you didn't notice, there's a beautiful naked woman on this page. But you didn't notice because of the graphics, poggies, brom, brom, brom. When you've got Sega Saturn's triple 32-bit processing power, nothing else matters. Sega Saturn, it's in the game. Yeah, I owned a Sega Saturn. Vosh versus Big Joel live on Twitter. Shit, it's going down for real. Kink at Pride makes people uncomfortable and makes the event less accessible when accessibility should be a priority. Keep less family-friendly stuff to many after parties and adjacent private venues every Pride has. The fact that this is controversial is insane to me. What bothers me about this is you're not just saying it makes sense to have PG parts of Pride, which that sounds perfectly reasonable. It's saying as some kind of the gays, all Pride parades should do this and it should only be the priority of every attendee. Like, I understand you want a block party, but I'm just saying, why should everyone exclusively be concerned with what you want? Joel, with all due respect, this is an extremely stupid argument. If you don't think Pride should have a single event catered towards all ages, accessibility, make that argument. But don't do this, well, who made you the king of making prescriptive statements thing? The problem here is that you're making your priorities for the event as on the face as of it as superior to everyone else's, and I'm not seeing why. Like, what grounds the moral authority to ban on King from Pride come from is the question. You're doing it again. I'm saying Pride should have a main event that is family friendly, and I've extensively explained why. Are you taking a position that this is hypocritical and must cater to adult sexual interests, and if so, why? In other words, you say this Pride should be a cool, queer-friendly block party you can attend to meet with organizers and get cute t-shirts, but like, even if some people want this aspect of Pride, there's clearly other people who have other things on the mind. Oh, that was 13 seconds ago. This is happening in real time. Man, Twitter debates. Nothing better than Twitter debates. It's just two people yelling past each other every time, without fail. I've never seen a medium that is more effective at doing that. At two people just standing there. Could you imagine being in person and having conversations the way people have Twitter conversations? It would be so fucking bizarre to sit in front of another human being and be like, well, my idea is called Idea X. Idea X, and yet Y is available, and you have not said a thing about B. He's like, yeah, I'm not talking about Y. You would bring up Y. After all, idea Y is deeply troubling, and it makes you a pedophile. Oh, pedophile, eh? That's why, of course, you would bring up idea Y, but not idea B. I can tell why, because you've been an idea B advocate your entire life. Idea B, says the idea S supplier. Yeah, sure. I'm going to listen to a person who speaks about idea S when idea B was clearly the most valid idea. I hate you and you're literally Hitler. You hate me and I'm literally Hitler. So says Hitler. Hitler. Oh, Hitler much? Hitler? Well, fuck you, Hitler. Yeah, okay, Hitler. Like, there. That's fucking every Twitter conversation in a fucking summary. Like, there you go. That's all of it from start to finish. Not only is it performably white, but hetero as well. To that end, Vosh's position is a position of having the advertiser-friendly parade. But here's the thing. We have both. Most Pride events have been dealing with this far before the left came on the scene and wanted to suddenly debate this as this new idea. This has been a debate that has been going on every single fucking year by people who have way more say in this arena than any of us fucking armchair jabronis, all right? Like fucking people who actually are still survivors of Stonewall, shit like that, have been pushing up against this. Is it okay because I want to have my queerness be valid in open public displays? But I also want children to find and have a space where they can feel safe and accepted and see that, you know, the LGBTQ plus community is not just like depraved and sexual like they're being told by right-wing Puritans that it is. And guess what? We now have both. There are events that are catered specifically towards family-friendly stuff. Justin Trudeau is often in them, running around, pretending he's gay for the day, as he likes to performatively do, and then all of a sudden become straight as soon as it's over. That one exists. And guess what? There is the nighttime block party, which is still out, open, and pride pleasing, but is also super sexual in its nature and has a ton of stuff. There's also the stuff that goes on in the clubs afterwards, and that shit is, yes, every single level of depravity you can imagine, and all these things are separate, and they have been now for a while. This has been a thing going on, you know. We're still doing this. We're still doing this thing. That said, I mean, this is a bit of disingenuous, right? I think it's fair that I took this from no public space of Pride should have kink as a blanket statement, considering this is very much what you seem to be saying. If you want something more spicy, there are a billion places for that. After parties, blah, blah, blah. I'm asking for one widely accessible event. There is. And that's why I'm like, we're doing the thing. We're doing that thing where we're on the twitter.com and we're yelling past each other for the clicks and the clicks and the... Like, you know the shittiest thing about Twitter? Is that no one makes money from the ad revenue. Like, no one. Like, if I post a video, I don't get any money from ad revenue. So we do all this for free. I mean, you can make an argument that I get to use it for promotional purposes, but I don't really see like I have a huge Twitter account now. I don't see a huge flow of traffic from Twitter. It's just free content for the Twitter gods. That's basically what Vosh is saying. His spicier memes came out when people in the community could not accept not sexualizing daytime events. No one is talking about how white nationalist femboys are actively trying to vilify the gay kink community. Oh, can I say one last thing while we're here about this whole issue? I find this deeply offensive. I find this troubling. I don't want kids exposed to this. I don't think children should be going to military events. I don't think children should be going and dressing up in military gear as soldiers. I don't think kids should be going to like air shows and talking to their dads about what's that recruitment station over there, daddy, and what can I do? I think this is deeply upsetting. Okay? I think this is indoctrination. Now, one is totally fine and all-American and wonderful. And if I show you a leather daddy on screen right now, well, that is depraved, degenerate, and exposing children to something that is going to pervert their minds. It may turn them gay. Who knows? You know? Like, I think that's where my 25% comes from. I once saw a leather daddy and I was like, oh God, the agenda, it's working. It's happening. In real time, I'm being agenda'd. No kink at Pride, what's next, a drag ban? Funny you should say that. So which one of you decided to make no kink at Pride a thing? I missed when I first took off as a trend, so I couldn't find the first one of you nitwits who set this fire to the burning garbage scow headed towards the levee of a hot take, but it ended up as a thing on my social media. Yes, I called the opinion of flaming boat of trash because it is. I'm frankly too worn out from this stuff to point out that to be nice about it to anyone. Saying that there's no kink as a place at Pride is a bad opinion and you should feel bad. First of all, kink at Pride was long before you upper middle class queers decided to take their kids to Pride. Besides, what 6-year-old really enjoys wandering around an asphalt street festival in June? Remember when we used to tell the straights that explaining homosexuality to their children was a problem, not ours? Same goes for you and your J. Crew shorts and boat shoes. As for those of you who are arguing how a bunch of queers running around in collars, harnesses, and body tape over their nipples makes us look bad in front of the straights and supports their argument that we're all perverts, well, you might want to sit down for this. The ones who think we're perverts don't care about how we're dressed. I mean, the fat leather daddy bear with the assless chaps and speedos was never going to be a bridge too far for these folks. Our existence crossed that one a while back. Also, I know these assless chaps aren't a redundant thing to say, but it's more fun that way. And on top of that, nothing any of these kinksters are doing is illegal. No one is performing oral sex on the floats, and no one has their Jacob's ladder pierced wang hanging out of the sundial. Trust me, if these folks were doing anything illegal, the cops that some queers don't want at Pride would be arresting them. Probably while wearing the rainbow cop outfits as well. You know, there's that. Oh yeah, I dare you to tell these hardcore feminists running around that are down the pasties around their nips to cover up behind this is indecent. That's going to go over great. And why do we take these takes about how Pride festivals are only run by pop-ups at the end of May and the first week of July and not heard of again until the next year? Why it's almost as like these people complaining only really care about Pride during the Pride and can't be bothered for the rest of the year. Yeah, I want to hear everyone talking about Mardi Gras. I'm serious, okay? Mardi Gras is a festival where people hand out beads in exchange for titties. Beautiful titties. Thousands and thousands of titties getting woven and shaken in the streets. And yet children attend Mardi Gras festivals. Why are we not bringing that up? Why is that never talked about? Why don't we ever talk about Halloween and the sexualization of Halloween every year? And how every single costume that could ever exist has been turned into something sexual. I mean that. I bet you this year the Suez Canal boat will be the sexy costume, alright? The sexy costume this year will be the Suez Canal boat. There are going to be so many depraved and degenerate Suez Canal boats. There'll be fucking tits popping out of the side of the hull or whatever it is. I'm not really nautical, I'm sorry. And then there's going to be a guy dressed as seaman. And it'll be, I'm the seaman and you're the Suez Canal. And here we go. And it's going to be a whole thing. But why is this never fucking brought up, alright? This only gets brought up as something that is going to be depraved for the children when it involves gay culture. And that should be telling to a lot of people. It's like, oh, gay culture, suddenly we must not have our children exposed to this potentially damaging thing or they might get the gay. Oh no, if we don't spend too much time talking about this, gay will occur. Every single one of them will be transformed. Like, what the fuck? Suez Canal boat porn. It's a matter of time, I swear. It's coming out.
Hey, do you like movies? Do you like Serfs? Do you want movies and Serfs watching the movies? So then come over to the new channels. It's the Serfs cinema. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Can you do the thing, you know, that thumbs up and comment and all those things that help us out in the algorithm that controls every aspect of our lives? Also, if you happen to have a Facebook account, can you delete it? Like just delete it. You should probably delete your Facebook account because It's not a great company. But hey, if you can't do that for whatever reason, I understand. And could you also go to facebook.com/thesurftimes then and give us a little like and a follow. We're just trying to push back against the fact that people like Ben Shapiro happen to dominate the platform entirely. And when everyone asks why do older generations believe the things they believe, one of the problems is the majority of them on social media use Facebook. So to counter that, we're just going to be on there too now. Also, if you happen to have a union or a worker co-op or even a leftist project, podcast, website, Zoom, MySpace, it doesn't matter. We will advertise it for free on this channel. All you got to do is go to weareserfs.com and use the forms that we got there, weareserfs.com. Thanks, everybody.
To our gods, I'm Raft and Xander Corvus. We shall build golden idols in your honor. To our monarch, Tom Spiker. Our soft, spongy flesh is yours to command. To our lords, Evan Nudie, Trevor R., Alexander Thaler, Ryan Lubin, Bisexual Black Gamer, Toe Fox, and Jeffrey Lamb, we proudly carry your sigils onto the battlefield. And to our Knights of the Round Table, Riley and Anna, Poodlehawk, Multi Mondi, Timothy Hart, Trevor Janis, Lemmy 101, Anthropophagic, Saren 42, Chronic to Hemphog, Callie Kotka, The Great Pudini, Von Janny, Catherine, Radical Maniac, Ramon Acosta, Encosin, J. Fraser Cartwright, Jimmy Bignuts, Violent Orchard, Sophie Baby, Political Puppy, Andreas Chiringuito, Zach Christensen, Nicholas Marks, Jopi, Josh Mickelson, Melissa Murphy, Todd Buckingham, Todd Lajeunesse, and Constance Joyce Lacheris. We tip our cap and lift our mug and salute you.